Year two is make or break for these running backs. Let's talk about them.
Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. We're your hosts, Calvin Timms and Dale Terry, and I'm pretty excited to be talking about the year two running backs here today. But before we get into that, how's everybody doing? You guys doing good out there? Dale, you doing good?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about some of these running backs we have going on and see if some of these guys are going to have a sophomore slump or if they're gonna be swinging for the fences here.
Yeah. It's always fun. This is the best time to be buying these guys for sure in the off season before training camp gets here, because then the hype videos and all the news blurbs and all that crap puts these guys either out of reach completely or makes them even better buy. But yeah, most of the guys you want to buy are right about now. This is right before the big break. I think, what is it, July, where there's June, where there's no football at all, and then July is where the training camps come back and everything. But
it's pretty light in June, and then like mid July is usually when we start hitting the ground running.
Right. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. June is gonna be a fun month. It's always so long, the break. Last few years it's felt a little bit better. Like they've stretched out the news a little bit more, it felt like. But yeah, June is like the drought of all droughts for the football fans out there. So yeah, we'll see. And there's no basketball during that time. I don't know what I'm gonna do during the summer. I guess I'll have to spend the time with my family.
You have to watch golf or racing, man. That's where it's at.
I need a nap, I guess. Yeah.
Hey, it is what it is. Gotta do what you gotta do.
All right. Well, thank you guys for checking us out. If you haven't checked us out yet, you can follow us over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, at Dynasty_Dale, or the podcast at FF After Dark. And you can find the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple, everywhere the podcasts are really found. We appreciate you guys. If you're over there listening to the podcast and you like this kind of content, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, just leave a comment down below. We love hearing from you guys and just helps us out. So appreciate it. Now let's jump into this. We're going to start with the order that they were drafted. And we're not going to go through every year two running back, because there's some guys here that I honestly just don't even care about. And I don't really want to waste your guys' time talking about Eric Gray. I can get into Eric Gray if you really want me to, guys. Just let me know.
Evans, maybe,
Yeah, let me know down in the comments. Dude, I feel so vindicated. I was so out on Zach Evans, and bada bing, bada boom. The dude is completely unrostered basically a year later.
He is definitely not the guy, who was the number one running back coming into college. He's definitely not that guy anymore, unfortunately.
It is funny how many guys like I've been in on that have, or out on, that have just completely, like Troy Franklin. Well, rookie Troy Franklin, completely out on that guy. NFL saw it the exact same way, so I feel a little vindicated with that.
A little bit.
He hasn't played yet. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He can prove me wrong, but it feels good to know that the NFL agrees with me that Zach Evans was talked about as the number one running back in this class with Bijan Robinson. That's how stupid that conversation got at one point. Like, never forget, guys. Never forget. Zach Evans was Bijan Robinson. What are we doing? All right. Number one running back drafted last year, Bijan Robinson, Atlanta Falcons, in for year two success. What do you think for Bijan? He finished as the RB number 9 in PPR scoring. Had 200 attempts, 200 rushes for 976 yards, a nice healthy 4.5 yards per carry, only 4 touchdowns, unfortunately, but he really didn't have many red zone carries. Thank you, Arthur Smith, for that one. And there's also a game, he played 17 games, but there was a game, it was week 15, where he had 0.4 fantasy points. He played 58% of snaps and had 7 carries for 11 yards, which was great. And then 1 catch for 3 yards. So that was his entire fantasy day. Turns out he was kind of hungover or injured, and they didn't say anything.
Something was going on. Yeah, it was
good times. Good old Arthur Smith. But the nice thing even in an Arthur Smith offense, he had 86 targets with 58 catches for 487 yards. The big benefits for Bijan were his receiving ability. We saw it in college. It paid off in the NFL. And yeah, I expect a lot more of it this year with Kirk Cousins coming into the fold. What are our thoughts on Bijan? Can he live up to the hype of, running back number 1 or 2 overall on most, ranking consensus
Right.
rankings? I believe so. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, it's before we answer this, I think we should play a game.
All right.
Um, are you high on Drake London?
Yes.
Are you high on Kirk Cousins?
Yes. I'm
Are
much
you
higher
high?
on Kirk Cousins
Yeah.
than
Are
consensus.
are you feeling all hot and bothered about Kyle Pitt?
Yes.
Then, therefore, you should feel so hot and bothered about Bijan. It should be my opinion.
I
In my
agree.
opinion,
I think
yes,
all
I
of
am.
them. I think all
I
of
am
them are going to
super
outproduce what they did
yes,
last
and
year.
yes, and I mean, at least for the returning guys, I think it's going to take Kirk a little bit to get back and feel comfortable, playing
Mm-hmm.
quarterback again, being a little bit mobile, and that kind of stuff. So, I feel really good about Bijan. I think Bijan's going to be his best friend this year. And historically with Kirk Cousins, he likes dumping it off to the running back when danger. It's the running back and the tight end too, both. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Which
but
Pitt's Pitt season, baby. Pitt season. And Kirk Cousins likes the tight end just in general. But no, the biggest reason why I'm excited about Bijan Robinson, last year he was the number 8 overall pick and he had 214 carries. And I remember that press conference with Arthur Smith where he goes, "Yeah, we're trying to save him for playoffs. We're
right.
trying to not run him into the ground." And I'm like, I kind of get it, but at the same time, this is stupid because you're losing a lot of games that you should be winning. So I'm kind of split here on your stupid usage of this player.
Yeah, and I get for running back that you want to keep their longevity, stuff like that. But like first things first, you got to make the playoffs and be
Right.
in contention. And I think that's where, it's the Desmond Ritter led Falcons kind of misstepped a little bit there. But I'm really excited for Bijan. I think he's gonna be great. I don't really foresee him finishing running back 9 like he did this
Mm-hmm.
last year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I can see him. I think at worst it's gonna be like a top 5. Honestly.
Yeah, I
So
agree. I mean, again, the targets are what are going to buoy him. I think
well,
the rushing attempts are going to go up, and I think the system and the scheme of this offense are going to be a lot better. He didn't break 1,000 yards rushing. I don't expect him to be like Derrick Henry, where he's busting off like 2,000
right.
yard seasons, but I could easily see him getting into the 1,300, 1,400 yards per rushing yard territory with about 400. Like he could legitimately go for about 2,000 all-purpose yards, in my
Oh, easily.
opinion.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree.
So that's where I see it. And again, only 8 touchdowns total last year. He should be in the 10 to 15 range as a baseline, just with his
Well,
talent and everything.
along with that, like they don't really have a wide receiver 2 right now, so it's kind of a three-headed monster with him, Pitts, and London.
They have
So
what's Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney's not a bad 2 in my opinion.
he's
I
not a bad 2,
I do
but
think
he's
he's
not a
pretty
bad
good.
2, but he's a really good 3.
I
So
agree. I agree.
so
I do agree.
I just don't see them. I mean, compared to other wide receiving cores that we've seen,
Hmm.
having
Or
2 really good
3
wide
or
receivers.
4. Yeah, I'm with you.
So like this room isn't as good as others.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
I can see him, being up there for the reception leader for the team. He's definitely gonna lead him in all-purpose yards.
Hmm.
I don't think they're gonna run him to death by any means, but they're gonna run him a lot more than they did last year.
I agree. I agree for sure. And touchdown numbers go up. And again, I think that the biggest thing that will benefit him is Arthur Smith refusing to use him in the red zone. Like how many carries did he had like 3 carries the whole year in the
I think I
five
heard that
yard.
he was on the field for like 25% of red zone plays or
Yeah, it was
something.
crazy. It
It's
was
sickening. Yeah.
criminal, the usage that Arthur Smith had for him. So it was kind of dumb. Again, don't want to go off on a tangent there too much, but he's currently the number one consensus RB on Fantasy Calc, on Keep Trade Cut, wherever you want to look. And I agree with that value. With the age, he's only 22 years old, which is absolutely crazy that he's only 22. Yeah, he's going to be a very, very good player for a very long time. So I think he can live up to it. I don't really think of him as a buy or a sell. Just wanted to talk about him and what we thought for his
Yeah.
upcoming season. Yeah, Bijan's going to be very good. He's in my mind, he is the next Christian McCaffrey, where he's going to be a staple for rosters for many, many years,
Wild.
and in about 3-4 years, he'll probably be a league winner consistently. That's kind of how I view him.
I agree. I definitely agree with.
All right, let's go to the next guy, Jahmyr Gibbs. He was drafted at, what was he, 112
112.
versus
Yep.
108 for Bijan. They traded back. They wanted to take him at 6. They ended up trading back
Wild.
to 12, which if they would have taken him over Bijan, dude, I don't know what.
Well,
Fantasy Twitter would have burnt to the ground.
well, and especially with how he started the
Oh
season,
my goodness,
it was
yes.
it was slow. It was very slow and I think it was a good idea for him
Hmm.
because really I've never really seen him. I mean, he was a lead back at Alabama, but like for Alabama, running back rooms are usually pretty loaded to say the least.
Hmm.
So, I think it was good to kind of ease him into a role, and plus they had David Montgomery there. It's the lightning and the thunder kind of feel for everything. So, yeah, I'm super excited about Gibbs this year.
Yeah,
Um, I'm kind of in the same boat as we are with Bijan. Kind of like a hold if you have him. I
yeah.
don't think you can. I don't think it's time to sell him yet. Like he's not. I don't feel that peak value.
Nah, I kind of do personally.
Fair.
But I'm not getting rid of him. He's 22 years old, and
Exactly.
with how valuable running back is, it's just what are you going to get for him that's worth it, right? And you look at the trade calculators or the rankings or whatever, and it's like you could move Jahmyr Gibbs right now, right? For I'm just looking at so you can move him for basically Marvin Harrison Jr. That's not bad. Don't get me wrong, but Marv is a rookie first off, but he's also a receiver where it's
Yeah,
much deeper, right? And like I
100%.
I agree with getting elite wide receivers, and they will be with your team for a very long time. But the guy's only 22, and you need good running backs. Like that's why Christian McCaffrey is so freaking valuable, is because he can win you because nobody wants to really invest. This is I've been thinking about this a lot lately of the Patriots for long periods of time when they were in their dynasty, right? What did they always do? Like what did people always say about them every offseason? Every time people start to zig, Bill Belichick would zag. He would go opposite of what the league was trending towards, like
Yep.
he was bringing back the I formation when everyone was going to zone running, right? Um, he was
And the
always
two
trying to
tight end sets and
yeah,
and stuff like
exactly.
that he did.
Exactly. So every single person in every single league right now is going so hard for all these receivers, and like receiver value is just spiking out of control. Um and that's where I think that the running backs are becoming almost must buys, especially for the elite young guys, just because you can get them cheaper than probably their value is saying that you can, right? Like if someone offered you Marvin Harrison for Jahmyr Gibbs for Marvin Harrison, how many people in your leagues are going to take that trade? Nobody, right? Nobody
Yeah.
will take Jahmyr Gibbs. You would have to give Jahmyr Gibbs plus like a first for
Plus.
Marv, right? That's just maybe I'm crazy there, but that's what it feels like from all the leagues that I'm in, right? Nobody wants to invest in these running backs, and they do win you leagues. So somebody has to buy these guys, and that's where I would not. I do think Jahmyr Gibbs is peaked in value for running back, but I don't think he's peaked in value in terms of what he's going to provide for your team. Does that make sense?
Agreed. Yes. No, and I definitely agree with that. It's the again, like the running back shelf life is, I think it's 2 to 4 years. is a
Right.
typical shelf life for a running back. It is not very long at all.
Right. Right.
So, it's important to I think for these guys, I think for Bijan and Gibbs especially, like, you need to hold on to these guys and kinda let them settle in a little bit, and, I honestly feel Gibbs is I mean, I don't think his floor is a top 5 like I felt Bijan is, but I feel
Mhm.
it's like, top 8, which is still
Yeah, he's a guaranteed RB1 in my opinion.
yes,
And
agreed.
I real quickly, I didn't give the stats last year. He had 182 rushing attempts for 945 yards. I was looking back and forth. If you're watching on YouTube, you saw me flipping back and forth between him and Bijan just to compare their stats. He was a little bit better in the yards per carry than Bijan with a lot less, attempts. He had about 30 less attempts, but in about the same yardage, right? A lot more touchdowns. He had 10 rushing touchdowns, which was surprising given how dangerous he was through the passing game
Yep.
in Alabama, right? But he was still pretty productive in that regard. Bijan was better in the receiving game, which was I was a little surprised by it. That's why I was flipping back and forth. I was like, I think Bijan is the better receiving back between the two, but man, Bijan blew him out of the water in the receiving stats. But
Right.
conversely,
Well,
Jahmyr Gibbs was the better runner. It was like such a weird.
part of that is because the Lions have a far superior offensive line
Yeah,
to
that is true.
Falcons, and, like,
It is very good.
like, I feel you and I would have a better chance running behind their offensive line compared to the Falcons, you
Yeah,
know?
maybe. But no,
So, I'm
I
just being
do think
honest.
the biggest benefit was Jared Goff versus Desmond Ritter. You know what I mean? Like that
100%.
was the number
Yep.
one difference. But, Jahmyr Gibbs also got a little bit of a bump because David Montgomery got injured later in the season or
Yep.
earlier in the season. Like you said, he started off a little slow. I think that they're going to try and mix these guys pretty evenly this upcoming year. But again, I think he's a staple for a top
Well, and
12
and
guaranteed.
and 2 along with that, I don't think David Montgomery is gonna hurt Gibbs's value and
No,
his production on the field. I can see
nope.
him doing very, very similar numbers to what he did last year.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm with you
Very similar.
100%. All right, number 3 guy drafted last year was Zach Charbonnet,
One A.
221. He was the 21st pick of the second round by Seattle, and everyone hates Pete Carroll for this pick. This year is going to be interesting for Zach Charbonnet. Not that good of a rookie season. Only 108 rushing attempts for 450 yards. 4.28 yards per carry, which is pretty nice. Only one rushing touchdown. 33 receptions for 209 yards. Sneaky good with his hands. I really liked Zach Charbonnet last year. I was always kind of going back and forth between him and number 4, Kendre Miller. But, very disappointing because he went to Seattle. People thought that he was going to be able to push Kenneth Walker for the starting role. Didn't happen with Pete Carroll, but the Seahawks do have a new coaching regime this year, and that's where it's going to be interesting, right? Because they have no loyalty to either one of these guys. So if Zach Charbonnet is decent, like if he can outperform Kenneth Walker in training camp, he could easily become the starter, the number 1 starter. Or at the same time, he could eke out more of a opportunity where it's more of a two-headed backfield between these two guys, a two-headed monster between him and Kenneth Walker. So he's an interesting one to value. What are your thoughts on Charbonnet?
Yeah, he's definitely interesting, and I think it's gonna be interesting to see which way the new offensive coordinator kinda goes. Like, he's coming from Washington, with, Michael Penix and
Mm-hmm.
that group, and they were more pass heavy,
Right.
and, it helped that they had really talented receivers, stuff like that, and, I
Which
kinda that's how I feel with
Seattle's definitely
Seahawks.
got, right?
Yes,
Seattle
yes, but
definitely has that.
yes, yes, they have 3 very solid wide receivers, so I'm a little worried about him, and, with Kenneth Walker, I kinda feel those guys are very similar, have a very similar skill set, but, like, for Charbonnet, like, he is more of the pass catching back, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, compared to Walker is, so, he was very effective, catching the ball, but, um, I don't know if he's gonna get the production that we wanna see out of him because the two-headed backfield.
And that's where I think I see it a little bit differently from you, and I get it that the OC is from Washington, but the head coach is from Baltimore, right? And
True.
he's a defensive guy, defensive coordinator. What do defensive coordinators love to do? They love to
Run
establish
the
it,
ball.
establish it. Let your defense do the work, burn the clock. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, right? Again, I have no real idea how it's going to work from a power dynamic of who's going to have the final say. Is it going to be more of the head coach, or is it going to be more of the offensive coordinator that's going to be leading how the plays are drawn? Right? Is the new and I don't remember his name off the top of my head. That's the reason why I'm just saying the coach. But is he going to push him to run the ball more, right? Versus trying to be more pass happy. And again,
Right.
if they try and run the ball a little bit more, that's where I could see Zach Charbonnet eking out a little bit more of an opportunity. But Kenneth Walker is still a really good back. I still hate this from a fantasy perspective. This is the worst backfield to try and figure out what to do with in
Yeah.
Dynasty. But there's some opportunity for Charbonnet for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but I don't know. It's gonna be. I think it's we don't know enough of what they're gonna do yet. So I think if you do go out and get them, I wouldn't pay a lot for 'em.
I do think he's fairly cheap. I'm just looking right
Yeah.
now. He's valued basically for Jalen Polk or the 208, 209.
Oh, I would love that.
I mean,
I'd be. I
I
mean, personally, me, I would be all over that. I feel I feel more comfortable taking dart throws for like a mid second on those
yeah,
guys.
yep, late or even a late sec. I mean,
Even
Marshawn
late second.
Lloyd is valued ahead of him. Like, I don't, I don't think that's a good idea. you know,
Right. Right.
so something definitely to keep an eye on. Zach Charbonnet, I feel like he's a little bit of a buy right now, but you guys can let us know down in the comments below. Kendre Miller was the number 4 guy. I kind of mentioned him a little bit. I'm still really high on Kendre Miller, and I think he's being massively undervalued. I'm going to be sending out trade offers to get Kendre Miller in basically every league that I don't have him in pretty soon because drafted 308 to New Orleans last year, kind of missed the entire year to injury. Really didn't do much. He played in 8 games total, but if you're looking on YouTube, we have the weekly scores up and everything. Those first 7 games never broke 36%. That was the highest. He had 134, and then after that, he didn't even break 30 in any of the other games. So not much of a total snap percentage in most of those games. Even the last game of the year, he only had 36% of the snaps, but he kind of popped off a little bit there.
Yeah.
13 carries for 73 yards. 5.6. That was the last game of the year where they were trying to make playoffs. They gave him a lot of run in that game, and he kind of proved why they should believe in this kid. I believe in Kendre Miller. I think he's a really talented and really good player. He needed to get healthy, and he's so freaking young. He's only 21 years old. So
Yeah.
I like Kendre Miller a lot. And you look at what his value is, and obviously he doesn't have many stats, right? Because he didn't play much.
Right.
41 attempts for 156 yards, but again, you're looking at the same value as Zach Charbonnet, where Zach Moss is in the same range, Marshawn Lloyd, Jamison Williams, some of these guys, where I would happily give that up for Kendre Miller. Again, running backs will win you leagues, and Kendre has a lot of opportunity in front of him.
Yeah. No, I agree. Do you think he will lead the Saints in rushing yard?
In rushing yards,
Rushing yard.
probably.
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 Because it's Alvin Kamara, it's Jamal Williams still there.
Jamal Williams
Um,
is doing nothing. He's not doing
I don't,
anything. I'm
I
not
don't,
worried about that. It'd be more Kamara, what he has left in the tank. I don't.
and I'm not sure how much he does have left in the tank. And
Right.
I'm with you. I'm getting a little hotter under the collar for Kendre Miller.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm feeling it, and I can see it. Um, I mean, I have some personal investment in Kendre Miller. You know, I traded Rashad White for the 201, which last year
Yeah.
ended up being Kendre Miller. So
That
yeah,
doesn't look so good a year later,
yeah,
but
it's not feeling great right now. But it could, with like in Dynasty, like we're trying to
right,
project 2 or 3 years out, and
right.
with him getting injured later in the year like he did, it didn't really set him up for a lot of success. And I feel good of um how they ran him it's the last game of the year. I think
Playoffs
it's
are
gonna be
on the line too. Like that
right.
was a must-win game that
It
they
was.
put him out there.
It
Um,
was, and it's gonna be interesting how Derek Carr plays with them.
mhm.
I know Derek Carr loves to dump off
Oh yeah.
any running back in sight. So
I mean, he had
so
good hands. He had 11 targets and 10 receptions. Like again, in you know, basically, about 3 full games, he had 11 targets with 10 receptions. That's not bad. If he can average about 4 catches a game, dude's gonna pop off. He averaged 11.7 yards per catch on 10 catches. Like the dude he is so explosive. I love Kendre Miller. And then you look at the offensive coordinator that they brought in, and it's a Kubiak, right? Not Clint. Clint's the father, but it's his son, Gary
players.
Kubiak.
No, no, it would be Clint because
Is it? Okay, maybe I'm switched. But yeah, the Kubiaks, they love to establish the run, and they love to establish the dump off to the running back, which, again, you just mentioned Derek Carr. That's what he loves to do. So,
yeah. So if it helps some people remember, it's basically Dalvin Cook.
yeah, exactly. That's what
I mean,
it could
yeah,
be.
yeah.
It
It's
could be.
basically gonna be hopefully, ideally, it would be like what Dalvin Cook was, a handful of years ago.
Right.
I'm not saying that, Miller's gonna be a top 5 running back, but, you know, like we can see solid RB2 potential out of him.
I mean, shoot, man. He's currently ranked as the running back uh in the 40s. Hold on. Me Kendre Miller is currently the running back number 37 consensus wise. And I do think that he can be a top 24 even with Alvin Kamara still here. People are very high on Alvin Kamara for some unknown reason, but yeah, I like Kendre Miller, and I think he's the must buy of all must buys this offseason, especially for the price. Again, like a
Yeah.
mid
Yeah.
second for Kendre Miller, yeah, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, and in my opinion, to a must-buy guy to a must-sell guy, um, Tyjae Spears.
Ooh, okay, nice.
That's just me, yeah. So,
You want to sell Tyjae Spears, huh?
yes, I think I'm gonna sell Tyjae Spears. Tyjae was drafted in 3rd round, 18th pick by the Tennessee Titans. I loved him coming in. I just think
So
people
explosive,
are
so
yeah, he's
explosive.
very explosive. He has no ACLs. That's I mean,
No, he has
I'm
one in the
oh, he
one
has
knee.
one.
The
Sorry,
other
sorry.
knee is the one that has
He has
no
one good knee,
nothing.
my bad.
Yeah.
But, he does have a very extensive injury history.
Hmm.
I love Tyjae Spears. I think he's gonna be a good running back. I think a lot of people are trying to buy him, and that's just increasing his value.
Oh yeah,
And so
he's ranked as
that's
the running back 26 right now. Just so to back up some of your numbers here, he's ranked as the running back 26. Again, Kendre Miller, Zach Charbonnet, both of those guys are 34 and 37 respectively. So, well ahead of the other two guys that we like a little bit more than him.
yeah.
And he's got the competition now in Pollard, a whole new coaching staff, right? No ACL in his knee. They
And
did try
and
to
and and
go ahead.
and then there's even more competition for the ball with, Calvin Ridley going to be there,
Right. And is
Burks.
Will Levis good?
Well, yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
honestly, I
yeah,
have
yeah,
no
yeah,
idea.
and is Will Levis good? Yeah, so, like, there's a lot going on there, and, I'm not so Spears is going to be a heavy part of that.
Right. The one thing, the biggest thing, the biggest issue I think with him is the projection in the rushing category for this upcoming season. If you look at his stats from last year, he only had 100 rushing attempts, averaged 4.5 yards per carry for 450 yards. Not bad. 2 rushing touchdowns. That was behind Derrick Henry, right? So you get it. We all
Well,
get it.
and then too, along with that, like behind one of the worst offensive lines
Oh yeah,
in the
it was terrible. It was
yeah.
absolutely terrible.
I mean,
But
they are projected to be a lot better this year. Well, I wouldn't say a lot better. I
they're
would
gonna
say
be they're gonna be a top 10 offensive line.
that's fair.
I'm putting that out there. That's my hot take right now. Is they're
Hey,
gonna be
that is fair. So, I know they're gonna be a lot better, but I'm still I think just everything that's going on in Tennessee, like there's just a
mhm.
lot going on, and I'm not sure if he's gonna get what people think he's going.
I agree, but the one thing I was gonna say is the biggest thing that he provided last year was the receiving potential, which I
Yes.
like Tyjae Spears, but I didn't think he was that good of a catcher coming out, right? Like he's not the most natural receiving back out of last year's class, right? But he had 70 targets, 52 receptions for 385 yards.
That's a
Not
lot.
not terrible.
And I
7.4
mean,
yards per catch, not bad. But I just don't know if you're going to see that same volume. You look at the games that he played with Will Levis, and he had 1 target, 6 targets, 6 targets, 3 targets. Not a bad average there. But again, you look at Tony Pollard, and Tony Pollard, in my opinion, is just Tyjae Spears upgraded, right? Like he's just the A plus version of Tyjae Spears, the better enhanced version, and he's the Charizard to the Charmander that is Tyjae Spears, right? So that's the only thing with that is I do think that Tony Pollard's very underrated, and people are kind of overvaluing Tyjae, like you're saying. So, all right, let's jump to the next guy. Your favorite little running back here, Devon Achane,
Devon Achane.
however the hell
Come
you say
on.
his name. I don't
At
remember
least
anymore.
it's been a whole year, Calvin. You
I
gotta
know,
get the name right.
dude. I didn't
He
have to
is
say it for like 6 months. I forget
I
what
know, it's it's kinda
it's
nice.
pronounced.
So, yeah, so for Devon Achane,
Mm-hmm.
he had a very explosive year,
Dude
like, he
was
only had
crazy.
103 it was only 103 carries
Mm-hmm.
for 800 yards, which is a 7.7 average, 8
Yep.
8 8 touchdowns, um, he had
He
almost
started,
200
dude. He started off the season so freaking
on
hot.
Fuego. In
He
Fuego,
Oh my
yes.
goodness. So yeah, first game against New England, 1 carry for 5 yards. Denver was the historic bloodbath, where I think they had like 700
It
yards of offense against Denver
something
just by the Dolphins in that
it
game.
was something nutty,
He had
yeah.
18 carries
I
for
loved every
200
minute.
yards. Then the next game against Buffalo, 8 carries for 100 yards, 11 carries against the Giants for 150 yards. And then after that, he only broke 100 yards one time after he got back from injury. So dude, he is the hardest one to value right now. I think we're talking about sells with Tyjae Spears. To me, Devon Achane is the number one sell of sells in this draft class because I don't think that it's sustainable what he was doing, especially given his height and his weight. He's small. He's 5'9", 180 pounds, 85 pounds, whatever it is. They brought in Jalen Wright, who was
Yeah,
another very explosive running back. They still have Raheem Mostert. It's a very crowded room. The
yes.
the opportunities are going to be very limited, and that's not necessarily a problem for him, but you have to be so insanely efficient with those touches that I just don't know if it's going to be like for me he's a best ball player and that's it. Like I don't want him week to
That's
week in
that's extremely
fantasy.
fair. Yes, and I don't disagree with that, as a Dolphins fan, I love seeing what he did. I think he's very explosive, but, he's kinda like Icarus, like, if you fly too
Yeah.
close to that sun, it's gonna burn, baby, but it's gonna burn bright for a little bit.
Oh yeah, for
So
sure.
I am really excited about him, but I do agree with you. He is a sell 'cause, I
Dude,
don't know how long it's
he's ranked as the running back 8, which is nuts. Like he's a good
right.
player, but there is no world where he ever finishes top 10. No world.
So I think I'm not so concerned about his size. I'm more concerned about the players around him and the other people getting opportunity. So
I'm only
that's where
con
I'm more concerned. I don't care about his size. The size doesn't really concern me like it does you.
I'm only
Um, you
concerned about it just because it leads to more injuries, and you saw that last year. He missed 6 games last year because of injuries, and you know, when he plays, he was very efficient, but there was a lot of games where, they tried to work him back slowly from the injury. And if you have that again next year, right, where, let's say he gets through training camp, he's good to go, he plays 4 games, gets injured again, and then the offensive coaching staff tries to slow roll him coming back. And it's like, well, you got 4 good games, then you have like a few games after that where it's hit or miss. And it's just, I don't know. Again, this is why I'm just scared by him.
I get that, but like I will say that is his couple games towards the end of the year where he struggled were against really good defenses in the Jets
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
Dallas. So
Yeah.
and two along with that, like it's the Dolphins themselves were falling apart
Right.
quickly.
It started
So
getting cold and they
well it happens. Hey, it happens, man. But I mean, part of that was that like like Teron Armstead was there
Mhm.
half the year. Um, and stuff like that. So like there was other things going into it, and plus they were playing really good. So
Right.
I don't disagree. He's an excellent best ball player. If you have him, I would probably encourage you to sell him. And I think you can get his peak value now.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I agree. And like, so just looking at it, he's basically rated with Michael Pittman or Devonta Smith or Dalton Kincaid. Like, yeah, give me any. And I know I was talking about this a little bit with Jahmyr Gibbs, but again, I think that Gibbs is the kind of guy where you can count on week to week. Achane is the kind of guy where he's gonna burn, and he might kill you. He might go in the playoffs and in week 17 put up
yeah,
50 points against you, and you get knocked out of the championship because you traded Devon Achane. But at the same time, I do think he's gonna have a lot of dud weeks where it's like, yeah, I'll take Michael Pittman for that, the consistency or something like that, where I can cash out on him for a solid wide receiver. So that's
yeah.
just how I look at him. But I agree. He's a really good player. He's going to be hit or miss, and it's going to burn a lot of people.
He is the definition of Icarus, and I'm here for it as a Miami Dolphin NFL fan, but for Dynasty that's
Yep.
not super great feeling.
Yep. I'm with you. All right. Let's go to the next guy, Tank Bigsby, drafted by the Jaguars last year in the 3rd round. What was it? 325, just a couple picks after Devon Achane. And man, Tank Bigsby, the
Preseason superstar Tank Big
preseason superstar. Dude started out the season just on the worst.
balling out.
Well, he started
Well,
off the,
no,
the training camp.
in the preseason he balled out, and
Yep.
there's people thinking, including me, that he could surpass Travis Etienne. Um, and then we come
did
into the
not
season,
did not work out
and
so well. The problem was, so like his first game, he just blew so many assignments in the pass protection, and then the
had a
fumbles, and
fumble.
it was just bad. He lost the fumble in his first ever one. I think he lost another fumble that's not recorded on Sleeper that was on like special teams as well. So it's like it was just not a good day. And you know, all in all, after the whole season, 50 attempts for 132 yards, not even a great yards per carry, just not a good season. Um, Doug Peterson still giving him praise, which is good. Um, I I don't know how to think about Tank Bigsby. I have him everywhere, and I was talking about earlier in the podcast. It feels good to be vindicated on like Zach Evans. It feels bad to be not vindicated on Tank Bigsby because I really like Tank Bigsby, and I thought that he had a lot of potential, and it's not looking so hot. But the few things I will say in his favor, he is currently the RB61, right? So he's worthless. I mean, he's worth less than the 312. You could give the
Yeah.
312 for Tank Bigsby and get him, which I actually would do. I actually would do that.
Don't
Um,
disagree.
but here's the benefits, right? They did not draft another running back, and Travis Etienne is going into the final year of his contract. I believe, right? He's a
He's his 5th year option did get exercised, so he
Oh, they
has this
did.
year and next
Okay.
year. Yeah.
Wow, I'm surprised they picked that up. I did not think they would pick up his 5th year option. So, all right, so he's got 2 years left. Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne, very, very good player. They have said 2 years in a row now that they do not want to overwork Travis Etienne. Now, they might not have a choice again if Tank Bigsby is bad, but I do believe if you go back to his tape and what he was able to do, even in training camp last year, it's not a crazy far out thing. Like people weren't making it up that he was performing extremely well in training camp. But for whatever reason, once the actual NFL season started, it did not translate on the field. And that tells me that all the talent is there. They still believe in him enough that they didn't draft another guy. People are going to be completely out on him after year one, but I do think that there is still a potential little spark for Tank Bigsby that, if he can get back to that training camp form and then just translate that to the actual field, there is so much potential there with that. But yeah, it's not looking good for Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I would be okay throwing, going a third, like a late third for him,
Yeah.
stuff like that. I think that's very fair because those are dart throws themselves. So, I mean, you might as well try to see if something
He's
sticks.
only 22
And
years old. Like he's
I know
still very, very
he
young.
has a lot of potential, but we'll see how it goes. And if you're able to get him real cheap, I think it could be a good opportunity to get a good, a potential flex back and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with the price. Again, Kendre
Yes.
Miller, Tank
Cheap.
Bigsby, these guys they're so cheap that it's definitely worth it. Good buy players right now. And same with this last guy, Roshan Johnson, who I know you were really hot on last year. He was drafted in the fourth round, 413 by Chicago. Chicago has done a complete makeover on this team this offseason, bringing in Caleb Williams, bringing in Keenan Allen, brought in, they drafted Roma Dunze. So it's just a very good offense suddenly, like a very good one. They get Shane Waldron over from Seattle to be the offensive coordinator. Roshan didn't really do a ton, but they did sign DeAndre Swift. He was the first player signed in free agency. Khalil Herbert's still here, but I expect them to move on from Khalil Herbert. He might be there for training camp, and he might be there on the roster. But I think Roshan Johnson is going to he's going to move into the number 2 behind Swift. Now, how do you feel about him going into year 2?
I don't feel horrible about him. I think he's kind of like a middling running back that, if Swift gets hurt, which, he's proven to have that happen.
Right.
I think he can be a really good pass catching back and, a good outlet for Caleb Williams.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. And
he,
just to
he
point
was
that out, just to reinforce that point, he had 40 targets last year and 34 catches. Like sneaky
Yeah,
good
yeah.
hands.
It was solid. It was solid in the limited action he had.
Yep.
So, I think he could be a sneaky buy. I mean, I don't think he's gonna be the running back one on this team anytime soon with what they gave Swift.
Swift gets
And
banged up a lot though, man. Like they
he does,
definitely
and
could.
I very much agree with that. And this offense is projected to be better this year with all the weapons that they added.
Hmm.
So, I feel pretty good about it. And I think he's gonna get a good split with Swift.
He's still pretty young too, 23 years old. So, there's time. Again, similar to Tank Bigsby. It's crazy to me. He's ranked above Tank Bigsby pretty heavily. Like, Tank Bigsby was what? The running back number 67, I think it was, 62. Roshan Johnson is running back number 57. So, like, he's even ahead of, or sorry, number 53. So he's well ahead of even Tank Bigsby. And I think they have an equal chance of eking out a role in their offense. So
I feel much better about Roshan than I do Tank.
that's
I
fair.
don't have a super good feeling about Tank. I think of the two guys we talked about, I think Roshan could be that guy.
Sure.
And I think I don't really like what Jacksonville's doing personally. I'm not a big fan of their offensive roster. I'll just say. Um,
Would you rather have Audric Estimate or Roshan Johnson?
Probably Roshan, because I know he's going to get some pass catching.
I think I'd rather
You
have
know,
an estimate, but
hey,
it's
that's
close.
yeah. I think it's pretty close. I agree. I agree. So I think it's I can see estimating stumbling into the end zone where like Roshan's going to catch more passes kind of thing.
Hmm.
So
Right. All depends on. I think estimate has a little bit more potential future with with um
Broncos.
with the who's the number one running back there?
Javante.
Javante, yeah, Javante Williams. With him being a free agent next year, I think that there's some potential upside in estimate, but
Definitely.
yeah, I don't blame you. It's very close. They're back to back, so yeah, very good opportunity potentially. I think he could solidify himself as the number 2 in this offense for sure. And
Absolutely.
again,
Absolutely.
at late third, early fourth value, it's pretty nice. It's hard to pass that up. Running backs, man, they're so valuable once they actually hit. Like if DeAndre Swift gets injured, which is likely, right? Unfortunately for DeAndre Swift, his body just does not seem to hold up. All of a sudden, Roshan Johnson, he's going to be floated out there for like second round pick, So you're paying a third. You could, even if you want to just capitalize on it and move him in 6 months' time, you buy him for a third, you sell him for a second. You're just making profit, right? So I like buying Roshan. I like buying Tank Bigsby. I like buying all these guys. Again, once training camp gets here and these blurbs start coming out, if Roshan or Tank Bigsby start having a really good training camp again, it's going to be the GTA, what is it, GTA 3 or whatever meme, like, oh shit, here we go again. I'm
Right.
back
Yep.
in, So
Yep. Pretty much.
it's going to
I agree.
happen. So buy him cheap while you can before all that happens, and just prosper later in the season, especially with how people want to give up these guys for any wide receiver that they can get their hands on of equal value. Go and get these guys because they can definitely have a very important role for your team, and then you can also capitalize with injuries and opportunities. So
Right.
all right, so that's the year 2 running backs. There's a few other guys, Eric Gray, Chase Brown. There's a few other that just guys to keep your eyes on. But
Deuce Vaughn. Come on.
yeah, super
I know.
great opportunity there. He actually kind of does have some opportunity because
He does.
that backfield sucks. But
It's pretty bad. Yes, it's
but
pretty bad. It is Zeke all day, and we'll see how that goes.
yeah, it's not looking great. But
It's not super good.
dude, they should take. Oh god, Dallas, why? Should have taken Brandon Allen.
Or like any other running back in draft. Yeah.
No.
But
All right. Well, that's our year 2 running backs. We're going to be talking about the wide receivers as well, guys that we kind of like to some buys and sells on the year 2 wide receivers. There are a lot of underperforming wide receivers compared to the hype last year. So we're going to get into those guys with the next video. If you like this content, again, please follow us on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, at Dynasty_Dale, and at FF After Dark. If you can, please leave a comment down below. Let us know your thoughts. Who are we high on that you're low on, or vice versa? Who are you higher on and we're lower on? Or just whatever thoughts come out of your brain. I don't really care. I just want to see the comments so we can talk it out with you guys. We love hearing from you. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out tons of content, and we appreciate you guys listening to the podcast. Dale, any last thoughts?
send it on home.
All right. Thank you guys. And until next time, have a good night.
And we all got dreams, we all want things, but what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?